Medieval peasants had better nutrition than you do. While big agriculture pushes weak, modified crops, they've systematically buried 15 ancient fruits that contain 10 times more nutrients than anything in your grocery store. But why would they hide nature's most powerful foods from us? Picture your great-grandmother's garden. She probably had a funny-looking, bumpy fruit that smelled like perfume and tasted like, well, nothing you'd recognize today. That was quince, and it was tougher than a $2 steak. While modern farmers baby their crops with chemicals and genetic tweaking, quince just laughed at poor soil. Alkaline dirt that would kill an apple tree? Quince thrived there like a retiree in Florida. Medieval folks knew this secret weapon could grow where nothing else would. But here's where it gets interesting. Those tough aromatic fruits didn't need pesticides because bugs couldn't stand them. The skin was harder than my father-in-law's hearing, and the smell was so strong it practically screamed, "Stay away!" to every pest in the neighborhood. Then there's the storage game. While fresh fruits rotted faster than campaign promises, quince sat pretty through entire winters. No refrigeration needed. Just toss them in a cool spot, and they'd keep your family fed when everything else was frozen solid. The real kicker? Medieval people used quince as medicine for upset stomachs. Makes sense, right? Something that tough probably scared the indigestion right out of you. Well, quince was just the beginning of agriculture's lost treasures. Medlars might just be the weirdest fruit you've never heard of. These brown, apple-sized oddities were once more valuable than gold in medieval kitchens. And for good reason. Here's where it gets interesting. While your grocery store apples turn to mush after a few weeks, medlars actually get better with age. They ripen in winter through a bizarre process called bletting. Think of it like nature's version of aging cheese, except it happens to fruit. Medieval folks weren't crazy. They knew something we forgot. Medlars could survive brutal frosts that would kill modern fruit trees faster than a teenager's attention span. No heated greenhouses needed, no chemical treatments, just pure, stubborn survival. But here's the kicker. Medlars are loaded with natural pectin. That's the stuff that makes jams gel without adding artificial thickeners. One medlar had enough pectin to set an entire batch of preserves. Try doing that with your genetically modified strawberries. The taste? Well, let's just say it's an acquired one. Some folks compared it to wine-soaked dates. Others called it nature's pudding. Either way, medieval people couldn't get enough of them. Modern agriculture pushed these hardy survivors aside for prettier, sweeter options. Makes you wonder what other natural powerhouses they've hidden from us. Speaking of hidden gems, wait until you hear about service berries. Well, if you think modern agriculture is impressive, wait until you meet the serviceberry. This little champion could survive winds that would send today's pampered fruit trees running for cover. If trees could run, that is. Medieval communities didn't mess around when it came to reliable food sources. They needed fruits that wouldn't throw tantrums when the weather got rough. Serviceberries delivered big time. These trees developed root systems so deep they practically shook hands with the earth's core. While other trees toppled over like dominoes in a windstorm, serviceberries just stood there, probably chuckling at the chaos. But here's where it gets interesting. These berries came naturally sweet. No artificial sweeteners, no high fructose corn syrup, none of that modern nonsense. Just pure, honest-to-goodness sweetness that made medieval folks happy without rotting their teeth. And talk about preventing scurvy. Long before anyone knew what vitamin C was, serviceberries were quietly doing the heavy lifting. Entire families would spend days harvesting these purple gems, turning it into a community event that rivaled modern block parties. The blossoms? Natural insect repellent. No chemicals needed. Makes you wonder what other secrets these forgotten fruits are hiding, doesn't it? Speaking of natural protection, our next medieval marvel took defense to a whole new level. Sloe berries make poison ivy look friendly. These little dark fruits grow on bushes so thorny they could stop a charging knight in full armor. Medieval farmers weren't planting them for fun. They were creating living barbed wire that happened to produce incredibly nutritious food. Here's what makes sloes fascinating. They're basically nature's multivitamin disguised as something that'll pucker your mouth like you just kissed a lemon's angry grandmother. The antioxidant levels in these berries put modern superfoods to shame. We're talking compounds that make blueberries look lazy. But the sourness, that's their superpower. While today's fruits are pumped full of sugar to make everything taste like candy, sloes stayed true to their bitter roots. Medieval folks knew how to work with that tartness. They'd turn these astringent little warriors into preserves that could last through famines, or mix them with honey to create medicines that actually worked. The bushes themselves were tougher than a $2 steak. Drought, frost, poor soil, Sloes just shrugged it all off and kept producing. No pesticides needed when your natural armor includes thorns that could double as medieval torture devices. And here's the kicker. Those same thorns that protected the fruit also protected entire properties. But if you think sloes were impressive, wait until you discover what medieval communities did with mulberry trees. Medieval mulberry trees were like the Swiss Army knives of the fruit world. But here's the kicker. They weren't even grown mainly for eating. These crafty trees powered Europe's silk industry by feeding millions of silkworms. Think of mulberries as running the world's first sustainable factory. The silkworms munched on mulberry leaves all day, then spun silk that made medieval nobles look fabulous. Talk about a side hustle. But wait, there's more. The berries themselves packed a nutritional punch that would make modern supplements jealous. Deep purple, almost black, they stained everything they touched, including fingers, clothes, and teeth. Medieval folks didn't mind. They knew these little gems were worth the mess. The trees grew faster than gossip in a small town. Plant one, and within 3 years, you'd have fruit cascading from every branch. No babying required. These weren't your high-maintenance fruit trees that needed constant attention like a needy houseplant. Here's where it gets interesting. Mulberry leaves also doubled as medieval medicine. Got a cold? Chew some mulberry leaves, infection acting up? More mulberry leaves. They were basically nature's first aid kit. Then there's the color factor. Those dark berries created stunning natural dyes for textiles, making them twice as valuable. But the real shocker about medieval fruit preservation methods will leave you speechless. These dark purple clusters pack more healing punch than your grandma's entire medicine cabinet. And trust me, she had quite the collection. Elderberry trees are basically the overachievers of the fruit world. They'll grow anywhere. Rocky soil, swampy ground, even that weird corner of your yard where nothing else survives. Medieval folks called them nature's pharmacy for good reason. But here's where it gets interesting. Modern research shows elderberries contain compounds that literally wrestle viruses to the ground. We're talking anthocyanins and flavonoids that make your immune system feel like it just chugged an energy drink. Medieval herbalists knew this centuries before we had fancy labs. They'd brew elderberry syrups every autumn, storing them like liquid gold for winter's inevitable sniffles and fevers. Smart cookies, those medieval types. The crazy part, big agriculture can't replicate this natural complexity. They've tried creating synthetic versions of elderberry's active compounds, but it's like trying to photocopy a symphony. You get the notes, but you miss the magic. Then there's the waste-nothing approach medieval people perfected. Berries for medicine, flowers for fritters, bark for pain relief. Even the leaves had their uses. One tree, endless possibilities. Well, speaking of medieval ingenuity, wait until you hear about the mystical fruit that ancient druids believed could ward off evil spirits. Rowan trees basically laugh at difficult terrain. Rocky hillsides, no problem. Poor soil that would make an apple tree throw in the towel? Rowan's already setting up shop. Medieval folks called these the mountain ash, though they're not related to ash trees at all. Talk about ancient fake news. But here's what made Rowan special. While other fruit trees demanded prime real estate, Rowan happily grew where nothing else would. The berries pack more vitamin C than most modern fruits. Think about that for a second. Medieval people were accidentally getting better nutrition than half the stuff in today's grocery stores. Makes you wonder who's really winning the food game, doesn't it? Now, Rowan berries are tart, really tart. Like pucker your face and question your life choices, tart. But medieval cooks knew their tricks. They'd turn these sour little bombs into jams that could outlast winter and taste amazing. Here's the kicker. Rowan flowers naturally repel insects. While modern farmers spray chemicals worth more than my first car, medieval orchards had Rowan trees doing pest control for free. The entire tree was basically a natural pharmacy and pest management system rolled into one. But wait until you hear about our next medieval superstar. This one actually gets better in the cold. Damson plums might look like your average fruit, but they're basically the Chuck Norris of the medieval orchard world. While modern farmers struggle with climate-controlled greenhouses and chemical sprays, these tough little purple gems laughed in the face of frost and kept producing year after year. Here's what's wild. Damsons pack more nutrients per bite than most genetically modified fruits today. Medieval folks didn't need nutrition labels to know they were onto something good. The dense, almost chewy flesh delivered vitamins that kept entire communities healthy through brutal winters. But here's where it gets interesting. These weren't your sweet, candy-like grocery store plums. Damsons had a sharp, tangy bite that could make your face scrunch up faster than watching your neighbor try to parallel park. Yet that tartness was exactly what made them perfect for preserves and medieval pies that lasted months without refrigeration. The stones weren't waste either. Craftsmen carved them into rosary beads. Talk about using every part of the fruit. Meanwhile, big agriculture can't figure out why their modified varieties keep succumbing to diseases that damsons naturally shrugged off. Well, speaking of fruits that drove medieval communities wild with their unique properties, wait until you hear about the prickly survivor that thrived where others feared to grow. If your grandmother ever grew gooseberries in her backyard, she was secretly harboring one of agriculture's most rebellious fruits. These prickly little troublemakers don't need perfect conditions like today's pampered produce. Gooseberries actually prefer shade. While modern fruits demand full sun and constant babying, these medieval survivors thrived tucked under hedgerows where other plants gave up. Makes you wonder why we abandoned something so low maintenance, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval cooks discovered gooseberries' secret weapon: natural acidity that could preserve meat without refrigeration. Before anyone figured out food safety, these tart little orbs were keeping families alive through winter. Try doing that with a genetically modified grape. The Romans were absolutely obsessed with them. Horace wrote poetry about gooseberries, which tells you something about their cultural impact. When you're inspiring ancient poets, you've clearly made it. Then there's their space efficiency. A single gooseberry bush, no bigger than a coffee table, could feed a medieval family for months. Compare that to today's sprawling orchards that need acres just to break even. Their hardy bushes laughed at diseases that wipe out entire modern crops. No pesticides, no genetic tampering, just pure stubborn survival. Speaking of stubborn survivors, wait until you hear about the next fruit that drove French royalty absolutely wild. These tiny golden plums from France's Lorraine region were the medieval equivalent of nature's candy bars. But way better for you, obviously. Mirabelles packed more sweetness per square inch than a grandmother's compliment, and they did it without any help from laboratory scientists in white coats. Here's what made them special. They thrived in crappy soil. While other fruits threw tantrums over perfect conditions, Mirabelles just shrugged and grew anyway. Kind of like that one friend who looks great even after sleeping on your couch for 3 days. Medieval folks called them golden drops of sunshine. Cheesy? Maybe. Accurate? Absolutely. The fiber content in these little beauties kept digestive systems running smoother than a fresh oil change. No medieval stomach troubles here, folks. But here's where it gets interesting. Mirabelles became serious business in European trade. We're talking entire trade routes shifting because people couldn't get enough of these golden gems. Merchants fought over shipping rights like they were transporting liquid gold. Their natural sweetness meant no added sugars needed. Just pure, concentrated flavor that made taste buds do happy dances. The best part? They ripened late in the season, providing fresh fruit when everything else had already called it quits. Speaking of fruits that knew how to time things perfectly, wait until you hear about the Sorb apple. Meet the Sorb apple, medieval Europe's shape-shifting fruit that probably confused more people than a politician during election season. Well, these weren't your grandfather's typical apples, that's for sure. Here's where it gets interesting. Sorb apples had this peculiar habit of completely changing their personality depending on when you ate them. Fresh off the tree, hard as a rock, and about as appetizing as chewing on bark. But wait a few weeks after harvest, and they'd transform into something entirely different. Soft, sweet, and actually edible. Medieval folks figured this out pretty quickly. They'd harvest these fruits late in the season, sometimes even after the first frost, then store them until they bledded. Fancy word for rotting in just the right way. Makes sense, right? But here's the kicker. While modern apples get mushy and gross when they sit around, Sorb apples were designed for this waiting game. Their firm, crunchy texture when fresh meant they could handle months of storage without turning into applesauce. The fiber content? Through the roof compared to regular apples, and when winter food got scarce, these patient little fruits kept entire villages fed. Smart medieval orchards always kept a few Sorb apple trees around. They were like having a delayed-release vitamin pill that actually tasted good. Speaking of delayed gratification, there's another medieval fruit that took waiting to an entirely different level. Mespilus doesn't ring a bell? That's because big agriculture made sure it wouldn't. This golden beauty was basically the iPhone of medieval fruits. Expensive, exclusive, and absolutely everyone wanted one. Picture the fanciest restaurant you've ever been to. Now multiply that by 10. That's where Mespilus belonged in medieval times. While peasants were munching on turnips, the royal courts were savoring these delicate gems that made modern peaches taste like cardboard. But here's the kicker. Mespilus didn't need a team of scientists and lab coats to stay perfect. Those natural tannins, they worked like tiny bodyguards, keeping pests away without a single chemical spray. Your grandmother's medicine cabinet wishes it was this effective. The weird part is how poets kept writing about them. Medieval literature is packed with Mespilus references, treating them like edible diamonds. Makes sense, right? When something tastes that good and grows that naturally, people notice. These fruits packed more nutrients per bite than most things in your local supermarket today. Yet somehow they vanished from our orchards faster than cookies at a church bake sale. Then there's another fruit that disappeared even more mysteriously. This next one traveled thousands of miles along ancient trade routes, giving people energy boosts that would make your morning coffee jealous. You know what's funny about modern energy bars? They cost $4 and taste like cardboard mixed with regret. Meanwhile, medieval folks had Jujubes, nature's original power snacks that actually tasted good. These little red gems could survive droughts that would make a cactus weep. Seriously. While other fruits threw tantrums at the first sign of dry weather, Jujubes just shrugged and kept growing. Talk about tough love from Mother Nature. But here's where it gets wild. Jujubes packed nearly 10 times the fiber of regular apples back then. 10 times. That's like comparing a bicycle to a Ferrari, except the Ferrari also helps your digestion and doesn't need premium gas. Medieval travelers loved these things more than a retiree loves early bird specials. One handful could keep you energized for hours without that sugar crash modern snacks give you. No artificial anything, just pure concentrated vitality in a tiny package. The Silk Road traders treated Jujubes like edible gold. They'd carry them thousands of miles because they knew something we've forgotten. These fruits were basically medieval throat lozenges too, soothing scratchy throats centuries before anyone invented menthol. Well, speaking of forgotten powerhouses, wait until you hear about Bullis plums, the scrappy cousins that make modern plums look like pampered house cats. Here's something your grandparents probably knew that big agriculture desperately wants you to forget. Bullis plums used to grow wild everywhere across medieval Europe, and they were tougher than a $2 steak. These weren't your grocery store plums. Nope. Bullis plums laughed at frost, shrugged off drought, and basically told Mother Nature to bring her worst. While modern plums need more pampering than a Hollywood diva, Bullis varieties thrived in conditions that would kill today's wimpy GMO fruits faster than you could say pesticide dependency. The tartness? Well, let's just say they had more personality than your average fruit salad. Medieval folks didn't need artificial flavor enhancers because Bullis plums delivered taste that could wake the dead. Sharp, complex, and genuinely satisfying. But here's where it gets interesting. These hardy little warriors were the backbone of medieval fermentation. Monks turned them into beverages that probably packed more punch than your uncle's homemade wine. The natural sugars and acids created perfect conditions for brewing without any chemical additives. Their resilience became legendary. No sprays, no genetic tampering, no laboratory interventions. Just pure, stubborn survival instincts that modern agriculture can't replicate. Makes you wonder what other secrets are hiding in plain sight, doesn't it? Speaking of hidden treasures, there's one more dark jewel that medieval Europeans considered liquid gold. Black currants were the medieval world's little dark secrets. These tiny powerhouses packed more vitamin C than a modern-day supplement bottle, and they didn't need a fancy lab to make it happen. While today's fruits get pampered in perfect conditions, black currants thrived in the shadiest, dampest corners of medieval gardens. Kind of like that one relative who somehow looks great no matter what life throws at them. These bushes didn't care about perfect soil or constant sunshine, they just grew. But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval folks discovered something big agriculture doesn't want you knowing. Black currants could cure almost everything. Snake bites? Check. Liver problems? Absolutely. Romans swore by them for ailments that would send us running to the pharmacy today. The deep, rich color wasn't just pretty to look at either. Those dark juices served double duty as both drink and dye. 1. Bush, multiple uses. Try getting that efficiency from your genetically modified strawberries. What's truly remarkable is how little care these plants demanded. Plant them once, harvest for years. No pesticides, no special fertilizers, no weekly maintenance schedule. They were basically the medieval equivalent of that reliable old car that just keeps running. Well, turns out our ancestors knew something about sustainable farming that we've completely forgotten.